Welcome to Women's Sports Weekly, where women's sports happen every day, but we talk about it once a week. I'm Carolyn.
And I'm Danielle. Women's Sports Weekly is a podcast where we discuss the latest news, explore interesting stories, and share our love for women's sports. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at WomensSportsWeeklyPod. Follow us and rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Send us an email at WomensSportsWeeklyPod@gmail.com, and we may feature your email on our Listeners Experience Zone, the Les.
And the Les is not a separate place.
Correct. If you send us an email, the Les is when we share those emails and share those thoughts with others. It's like our listeners' corner, listeners' experience zone.
That's right. You don't have to go anywhere different to submit something to the Les. Just send us an email or a DM. We have Run Club this week on Thursday at the 99ers Sports Bar in Denver. Run Club starts at 6 o'clock p.m. We will run 3 miles together and then have some drinks at the bar. If you say a secret word to the bartenders, you will get 50% off your first draft. The secret word this week is Ryan.
I'm so excited about this. You all might be wondering, why in the world would we have a secret word of Ryan? And why is it?
Well, if they looked at our episode title, they'll know why.
Oh, fine.
We have an interview today with Ryan Ruocco. It is a very special WNBA playoff episode. Ryan Ruocco is a sports broadcaster and play-by-play commentator for ESPN. He covers the WNBA and he covers college basketball. We have spoken about Ryan a bunch of times on this podcast, and we were so excited when he agreed to sit down for an interview with us. How did this happen?
Luckily, we had the chance to meet him back in April at the Women's Final Four. There was a ESPN breakfast for media, and this isn't how we got this interview, but that was our first interaction with him, and we were like, oh, he's just as cool and nice in person as he portrays himself to be. So we had that interaction, and then since then, we have tagged him in a few things on our Instagram story, and he's very active and has replied to us.
You actually tagged him in a post where I was saying that I would love to have him on, and he responded back and said, would love to.
Yeah, so we continued the conversation and we were able to schedule with him. So shout out to you, Ryan Ruocco. We were so excited to have you on the show, and we really appreciated it, and we know and hope our listeners will love the interview as much as we did.
So let's not chat anymore. Let's just get right into this interview.
Let's do it.
Ryan Ruocco is an award-winning sports broadcaster. He joined ESPN in 2008 and serves as the lead play-by-play commentator for ESPN's WNBA coverage. He is also a member of the lead NCAA women's basketball commentating team alongside analyst Rebecca Lobo and reporter Holly Rowe. In addition to his coverage of women's sports, you can also hear Ryan providing play-by-play action of the NBA, and he is a longtime commentator for the Yes Network. He is a native New Yorker and a Fordham graduate. We are such big fans of Ryan, as we've mentioned many times on the podcast, and we are so excited to have the opportunity to speak with him today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you guys so much for having me, and thank you for the warm intro. Loved our interaction when I ran into you in wherever the Final Four was this past
Tampa.
year. Where were we? Tampa. Yeah, it all runs together, and excited to get to talk to you now.
We love that interaction as well, and just really appreciate your time. So thanks for being here. Let's get into it. So sports has always been a part of your life. You grew up in New York, played baseball. Your father worked for the NFL. You went to Fordham, which has a legendary sports broadcasting program. What is it about sports that interested you from the beginning and keeps you coming back and interested?
I think I loved playing, and I felt like I always had a coach's mind. Like even when my coaches couldn't be at a rescheduled playoff game when I was 13 years old for my junior league, I was the one who managed our baseball team that day in a playoff game, and I've always had that level of interest and aptitude for the games itself and thinking about what's smart within a game strategically, and then just always loved the energy of playing, the competition, the winning and the losing. And so, like many young people, my goal was to be a professional player. For me, my main sport was baseball, but I always took an interest in announcers. And when my dad and I would watch games, we always would pay attention to the announcers and comment on them and what stood out about something they were doing. And so even if you look at my fifth grade yearbook, for career goal, and it said to play for and announce for the Yankees. I was 9 years old then when I filled that out. I always knew I wanted to announce along with the playing. And then when I realized the playing wasn't going to happen, what I used to always say is I thought the closest facsimile to the energy that you feel playing or coaching would be broadcasting. And so that's what I wanted to get into. I grew up just devouring sports every day. I'd watch, if I was home sick, I would watch SportsCenter on loop the entire day until I popped in the NFL Films Football Follies or 100 Greatest Touchdowns video. And I would listen to Mike and the Mad Dog for 5 hours a day on WFAN. I've always loved sports, and announcing to me was my gateway to be able to still feel the energy that you kind of feel playing. Obviously, it's not exactly the same, but the closest you can get if you're not going to play or coach.
That's awesome. We love that you're a Yankee fan. And my dad was like, you got to tell Ryan, I love when I hear him on the Yankees games. We're originally from New Jersey, so we grew up Yankees fans as well. But that's awesome. Obviously, we are a women's sports podcast, so we are very curious to hear more about what your day in the life looks like covering women's basketball. And we were wondering, does the WNBA differ much from college basketball?
Yeah, certain things differ for sure. Also, thank you to your dad. Shout out to all Yankees fans. For college, usually shoot-arounds are later. Shoot-around is where the teams go. They have some kind of walkthrough, kind of a scout before the game. We usually get access to players after they do their little 60-minute shoot-around. Sometimes we'll talk to the coaches then. Sometimes we'll talk to them pregame. But in college, shoot-arounds are usually later. Usually they're like 1, 2 in the afternoon, something like that, noon. In pros, it's usually 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. Some teams in pros won't take shoot-arounds, like Indiana isn't shooting around as I get ready to call their final regular season game. They haven't been shooting around. They've just been coming in early for a walkthrough at like 4:30. A lot of NBA teams do that as well. College teams almost never cancel shoot-around. College coaches aren't giving that time up. But for the most part, the cadence is very similar. You know, I'll wake up, do some prep, maybe get in a workout, go to shoot around, grab lunch with Rebecca and Holly, come back, do some more prep, maybe a little pregame nap, and then get over to the arena. One thing that's definitely universal across college and pros when it comes to women's basketball is the collaboration and accessibility of the athletes. There's just a feeling of community, and I'm sure you all feel this as well in covering women's sports. There's a feeling of connectivity and being a part of it and being a respected member of the community and being valued that I think I've always felt from a media standpoint in the way the players have been welcoming and helpful. That is very unique to women's basketball and maybe other women's sports as well. Women's basketball happens to be the one I cover. That is different than men's sports by and large. And I just love that part of it because it makes you feel like you're part of something, right? What do we as human beings all clamor for and need? Community. It's essential to us. And you could really love the highs and the thrill of what you do. But when you also have a feeling of community within that, which I get twofold, I get it with my immediate crew, with Rebecca Holly and our producers and directors. For women's college, that's Kerry Callahan and Jimmy Platt. For WNBA, that's Ian Gruca and Adam Bryant. They're all brilliant. And then I get it from the broader community because of the way the athletes, both in college and the pros, embrace us and are just so generous with their time and really so respectful of the jobs that we do, and really makes it fun and rewarding for us.
We have had so many similar experiences like that, and we started as fans. So to get to interview both college players and WNBA players, we're like, wow, they give us so much of their time. And like, honestly, we're like, I don't know if we deserve this much, but we're very grateful for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I do think it's pretty much universal from these athletes, which is great.
And it's probably cool from your perspective, Ryan, going from college to WNBA, because then you see the players go from college to WNBA and get to follow them. Do you feel like you build kind of long-term relationships with some of the players as you continue to cover games?
Definitely. And I've noticed that especially with these past 2 draft classes because I saw the entirety of their collegiate careers. So even someone like Caitlin, who I have a phenomenal relationship with, that was built on covering her games in college and being there, interacting with her on a daily basis during her tournament runs and building trust and credibility. And then also really getting to know her as a player as well, right? And when you have that front row seat, you know the intricacies of the game. Paige is another one I think of, who I have a great relationship with, who I got to see her entire collegiate career. And so there's a level of, even it could be something as simple as like maybe Paige isn't really doing a sit down, but I just have one or two things I just want to ask. She's going to give that time. And that is definitely a product of building that trust and building that relationship in college. And there's a lot of that that goes on with different players. I'll never forget being at the draft 2 years ago and all of a sudden feeling a tap on my shoulder, and it was Angel Reese, and she was just wanted to give a big hug and say, like, I'm going to be seeing you real soon, because I've been with these players, and then you're with them in the pros. And then there's also something that I think is exciting and rewarding when you get to know them and you know them as young women and see them grow up as players and as people for a few years, and then getting to see them in a professional environment, and you root for them and you want them to do great. And it's helpful in knowing intricacies of their game. It's also helpful in seeing them as people and personalities. It's helpful in knowing parts of their journey and being able to reference those things. I also think there's things that are helpful as far as player comps go. I feel like that's an area where Rebecca Holly and I are very unique in being able to call the pro game as a lead crew, because we also do the college as a lead crew. When we're calling a college game, we feel comfortable leaning into what we might see from that player as a pro too, right? And that's not the only lens, and that's not even the main lens you want to look at collegiate players through, but it's a cool area to be able to go to, right? We were saying for the last couple of years, Sonia Citron, we think is going to be a really good pro, and like we feel confident saying that during a collegiate game because Rebecca, more than me, but both of us, we know, we have some idea. It doesn't mean you're going to have a 100% hit rate, but you have an idea of who might translate, right? Even if their collegiate production isn't gaudy. And so there's just a lot of ways where one thing helps another, whether it's our evaluation or our relationships as we go through things.
You are such an advocate for the players. We have watched you numerous times where you've said their names correctly, you use the correct pronouns for them. How you speak about them on a personal and professional level is just really admirable to us. You began covering the WNBA in 2013. What made you decide to do it? And then how did you gain all of those skills?
My immediate focus was just trying to do a great job. And I do think more than anything, at the foundation of building a relationship is taking care of whatever the main reason why you're there is. And the reason why I'm here is to do a great broadcast, which means doing right by the women of the floor, right? And the number one most important thing before any other skills and fun creative parts of my job is saying their names correctly. So that's something just purely from a professional standpoint, I'm always going to make sure of. Then obviously there's additional layers that I grew to understand the context of covering women's basketball where, in a lot of cases, they weren't given that level of, or they haven't been, or they still aren't given that level of professionalism and credibility that they deserve for a variety of reasons, none of which are good. And so you take even more care about it. And I think it just makes me more conscious to sometimes mention why you may be hearing a pronunciation that's different than what you're used to. Even with Demiris Duntis, everyone's like, it's Dantas. That's what we used to say. We used to say Dantas. And then we talked to her like 6 years ago, and she was like, it's Duntis. I was like, okay, that's how we're going to say it. So I can at least say, and maybe sometimes I even feel the need to overtly mention it so people don't think I'm being ignorant or disrespectful to Demiris. Hey, we've talked to Demiris. This is how she tells us to say her name. Or in the case of Kiki, who we all thought was Iriafen, and then we realized it's Iriafen. To be able to say, hey, Kiki made clear before the start of the season, it's actually pronounced Iriafen. And do it that way. There is a level of care that I think any broadcaster who takes their craft seriously is going to take that care. And then when you add in kind of the understanding of what some of these women go through in that regard and the lack of professionalism or credibility that they have to deal with, you maybe are even more certain or more aware of acknowledging different aspects of it. And I just think as a general philosophy, I want to uplift the women on the floor. And it's not exclusive to the women I cover, it's everybody I cover. Like, I want to paint them in the best light possible while also being somebody of journalistic integrity. And I'll joke with people who I have closer relationships who I might cover, like, if you're bad, I can't say you're good. Like that's not something that any broadcaster who's honest with their craft can do. But I'm always going to try and give the benefit of the doubt to the people that I'm covering and be kind about the way I might describe struggle and make sure I highlight success, always within the realm of truth. And so I think if you do that, people who are reasonable and rational are usually going to appreciate that and see you as a credible source for them. And also, the way I look at my job is I'm the score to the movie. I'm providing the score to the movie. You're watching what's happening. I'm helping the moments come to life for you, right? Well, part of that score is also helping shape the stories and emotions around what you're seeing on the floor. In order to do that, like I have to be credible. And so then what are your ways to be incredible? If you just say everybody's the greatest ever, always, then it takes out all the steam of everything, right? But if you're gratuitous in your criticisms, then you're also not painting the people of the product in a way that kind of gives life to the movie they're seeing. So it's just trying to be generally positive while being honest and bringing energy to what's happening on the floor.
That makes a lot of sense. And from our perspective, you come off as a very genuine person, and that shows through the TV. And the first time we met you, we were like, oh my God, he is so nice. Like, why is he so nice? But the fact that you can build these relationships with the players and be honest with them, like, I think everyone appreciates that. And one of the things we're curious about, you obviously learn a lot of information about the players. You build these relationships. Some of it could be very personal. And we know sometimes you do share things, and obviously we are sure you've made sure you can share those things. But how do you decide what to share when you're broadcasting?
I think first and foremost, the trust I have from athletes I cover is something I'll never take for granted. And so I always err on the side of not sharing rather than sharing unless I'm 100% certain. Like even things in our coaches meeting, usually if something's on the record or off the record. When you have the relationships that we have, you go in those meetings and a lot of times, maybe 20, 30, 40% of what you're being told is stuff that you can't use on air, but kind of just helps to shape your view or your vision or your perspective of a team and why you may or may not delve into a certain topic. Maybe you might look at a roster and say, why is this person only playing 15 minutes? That might be a topic for you, but maybe the coach is telling you a reason why that you can't share on air, but just helps you to not make it a focus. And I think generally the way I look at something is if I think it's something that should be brought to air or would be very interesting for air, I will check with the person. Like even last year before Caitlin's last playoff game, so it was game 2. We didn't know it was going to be the last, right? But Indiana, Connecticut game 2. I had asked her, hey, are you going to play anywhere this offseason? And she was like, no, I don't see that happening. And I was like, okay. And nobody had really known that yet, like if she was or she wasn't going to play in the off season. And so I just said, can I say on air that those are your plans? And she was like, yeah, you can. I was like, okay, cool. So like she trusts me. And then there's other times where Caitlin or other players might say something to me and say, hey, this is what's going on, but please don't share that. Even when it could be like the availability of someone for a game or whatever it might be. Obviously, there's things I know at different times that are going on that are more dramatic than that are like obvious don't shares. I also think I'm helped by I'm not in the news breaking business. Like a lot of times the broadcast crews, if they wanted to, could break news left and right, but it wouldn't last long because you wouldn't be a trusted person anymore, right? Like I think there could be times where you might know something and the person may not want to share it, but you might actually think it's in their best interest for it to be shared. And you might go back to them and say, hey, I know what you're thinking, but I actually think this could be beneficial for you. Here's why. What do you think? Just always keeping in mind the same way when you have your conversations on here, you're not looking for gotcha moments, right? If we break news on this podcast, great. But let's do it in a way where none of us feels like crap. And that's how I look at it as well, where I'm never going to share something that I don't think an athlete would want me to share. I'm lucky that I'm not in an area of the business where I feel compelled to break news.
Thank you for sharing all that. I think that's going to be really helpful for people to hear, whether they're fans or looking to step into this sports world. We have a new CBA coming that WNBA does. By the time this comes out, we'll be knee deep in playoffs. We have heard the players mention pay, parental support, and pension as some of the areas of focus in the CBA. Is there anything in particular you'd like to see in the CBA?
That's a really good question. First of all, I just want to see it get done. And I do want to say this. I think a lot of people are going to see potentially, lockout October 31st, right? And I don't know exactly what the specifics of the lockout may be. It may be that players can't get into their facilities until a deal is done. Maybe they will be able to, and that aspect of things will be allowed if negotiations are ongoing. I have no knowledge of that. But what I will say is, if it is, they're locked out October 31st, don't panic as a fan. There was, in my opinion, basically zero chance that a deal was going to get done in season. It's just not easy to negotiate while games are going on. It's just not. My dad was one of the chief negotiators for the management council on the league side of the NFL for over 3 decades. I got to witness CBA negotiations about as up close as you can without being in them. And I don't think I can ever remember them actually finalizing a deal while the season was going on. That's not typically how things happen. Everybody has different priorities and what's going on. What is Nneka Ogwumike going to keep flying to a different place on off days while she has to go play 44 game schedule in a very condensed period of time? No. So I would just say to fans, don't take the headline, which is going to get clicks, is like most likely to lock out, or there's going to be a lockout, or oh my gosh, there's a lockout. If there's not a deal done by, I would say, the end of January, then I would start to get concerned. I'll maybe even start to be a little bit like, please get this done by mid-January. But it could go till March as well. And that's not abnormal, especially when you're talking about what's going to be, by all counts, Kathy's talked about this a lot, a transformative CBA. So I just would caution not to get panicked. I think we live in a really difficult period of time to parse through information and decide what's credible, what's not. And collective bargaining agreements they're really complicated, and they're not meant for the troll farms of Instagram. That's not going to be your best way to be educated during a collective bargaining agreement. It's just not. So I feel confident it will get done. I think it makes too much sense for all sides for it to get done. And ultimately, I think that logic will rule the day, that motivation will rule the day. And so I have no worries about it getting done. It's just a matter of what it's going to look like. I think what I would be interested in is, do the players maybe sacrifice some guaranteed dollars for more of a play into the upside of the revenue, the overall revenue, and where it might go? Because if I was them, I'd probably be looking for some kind of a hybrid structure where I have guaranteed raises in my salary, which are significant, where whatever it is, if the minimum salary all of a sudden is 3x what it is now, or 4x, or whatever it is, it's obviously going to be some significant multiple of what it is now. But then also like, hey, and some clearly defined metrics of, in addition to these guarantees, we're getting X percentage of the revenue and X percent once we clear this bar. Something like that. Something that allows for them to have a participation in the upside that they can feel good about, even if it means sacrificing some of the guarantees of what the salaries might be. Because if I was them, I would be pretty comfortable betting on myself and the way this is going to grow right now.
All the estimates we're seeing is that it's undervalued. So for them to hedge their bets there, I think is a great idea.
Right. Yeah. One thing my dad used to always say to me in CBA negotiations is, he would say, you want a deal where both sides feel good, you have to work with these people. Like, you have to go work with these people, right? If you're a league, you don't want a deal where you beat the players into submission. All that does is create resentment and animosity, and then you got to go figure out a million other things over the life of the CBA, and it becomes more difficult because everybody's pissed off. Think about any aspect of your life. I know I've signed deals with both networks I currently work at, where when I signed them, I wasn't happy. I felt like I was not being treated fairly. And then for the life of that contract, I felt slighted. And it doesn't really help the working relationship. You're always going to be a professional, but it's just not the energy you want. And I think there's definitely ways for the owners to feel like their investments are being properly valued, the money they're putting into practice facilities, the money that they've spent in the past to keep the league going when it wasn't as profitable, the investments they've made in chartered flights even before a new CBA. And it's not popular to speak on the things that the owners are doing, right? It's like much more popular to just speak about what the players deserve. But I think the right path to success here is acknowledging both. And so for me, I think there's a way to acknowledge all that, what the owners are doing, and also understand that these players are at the moment woefully underpaid. They deserve so much more, and they deserve to participate in the upside of the league, of which they are the essential foundation of. So I think there's a place there where both sides can walk away feeling really good, where all the owners can feel like, hey, I want to continue to invest, and the players can feel like, good, I'm finally being properly valued, and if this league continues to have success, it's going to mean significant things for me.
We talked a little bit about this. You mentioned some troll farms, but the amount of coverage for women's sports has increased tremendously. And with that comes a lot of new eyes, a lot of new opinions, a lot of clickbait posts, a lot of trolls. How do you perceive and feel that shift covering women's sports for so long? And how do you interpret it all?
I think in general in this country, and I'm sure beyond this country, I just happen to live here, we have a media literacy problem. And to me, the most important thing that you could teach young people as they come up in this world is how to navigate the media landscape and understand what's real, what's not, and how to value certain things versus others. What's the motivation behind this post versus that? I do think there's a responsibility that is universally being skirted in the name of entertainment by different journalistic outlets to have some level of filter on what you're going to post or not post. In my opinion, if you're a credible brand, it should not just be for clicks. Also, I think that the major social media outlets that we use have done a god-awful job of trying to steer any of this, and somehow they've been kind of absolved from this. I see all the time in this women's basketball space, people will post these just totally fabricated quotes, like completely fabricated quotes, and somehow they get shared a gazillion times. And now you have some subsect of people who didn't bother to put any additional research into it because their lives are busy and they don't have time, and I don't begrudge them for that at all, who think that something happened that didn't. Like, this has happened to Jamel Hill like 6 or 7 times, where they use like these damning quotes that are completely made up, and then all of a sudden she's got to fend off people like, how could you say this about this person? And she's like, I never said that. I think there was some quote, I don't even want to do it justice, but there was some quote that I saw get significant traction that was attributed to her that she never said, but it was just created by some BS account where somebody's just trying to stir it up and get clicks. And to me, I don't know exactly how a regulatory board would be created, but there should be some sort of regulatory board or situation where if you're Instagram, if you're Twitter, if you're whoever, and you see this false stuff being posted that's clearly false, like a quote that just was never said, boom, your account's gone. Sorry. Like, yep. Your account's suspended. That's it. So women's basketball, it's a gift and a curse, this conversation. Obviously, I have a lot of thoughts just about the general media stuff with this, and it's a source of stress and frustration for me in general, but especially in today's political climate, it's just really hard to navigate and just try and be educated without being targeted and manipulated and buried into a silo. But in women's basketball, it's a gift and a curse because I do think there's such a passionate online presence in women's basketball. I do think it's served as some level of promotion then to drive people to the games and to drive storylines and drive eyeballs. And there's a value in that, right? Because then more people are exposed to your product. And also it's lent itself to toxicity that is not productive and really frustrating and aggressively inaccurate. And so I just think it's almost like you just have to give everyone the ability to filter it themselves, because these companies aren't going to do it for you. Whether it's a media company, whether it's the platforms that we're consuming this stuff on, they're not going to do it. So we just all have to be responsible enough to be like, was that really said? Or like, what do I really think about this? And to answer your actual question, before this incredibly long soliloquy, like, how do I see it manifesting? I see people in my own life who come up to me like, oh, can you believe this? Like, about the WNBA? Can you believe these players are doing this? Can you believe this? And 85% of the time, it's something that's just not true. But somehow they've developed an emotional response because of the way something's been like presented and then upregulated in their feed and like boom, 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 boom to them. So even though I know I can't steer everybody back on the path, when I have those interactions, I feel the need to be like, okay, here's what's actually happening, and try and dispense what I believe is truth in those moments rather than just letting them continue with whatever narratives have been spun and created.
We have that conversation a lot. We're like, whoa, the men in our life are getting a much different algorithm than what we're getting. And we have to do a lot of like, okay, that's not necessarily how it's working.
So something we like to ask everyone we interview, and this might be a little difficult, but who is your favorite athlete in women's sports and why?
Ooh, I'll just tell you what happens when an active play-by-play broadcaster gets asked something like that. Like, even people, if they're like, oh, who's your favorite partners to work with or whatever, it's like you start thinking about, like, how do I not anger people who I have relationships with? So the way I will answer it is this. I have never experienced something like what it's like covering a Caitlin Clark game. It's like going to a concert. And the anticipation when she pulls up from 30 feet, the reaction of the crowd, the attention from home, the emotional investment from fans, and a broad stroke of fans is unlike anything I've experienced in the sports that I cover. So covering her games is just a completely unique experience in the best way. And it would be dishonest for me to say anything other than that if you're just talking about a regular season game to a regular season game, because there's just like a very unique phenomenon, which you guys are well aware of, around her that really makes every broadcast she's involved in feel like this big event that I love. And the other things I think about when you ask me who is the favorite is I actually think about people in moments, right? Like, what are the other things that kind of duplicate the energy that I was just describing that happens so regularly in a Caitlin game? And I think about Asia and Stewie going at it in the playoffs is unbelievable to document. And like the WNBA finals in general, New York and Minnesota last year, it was just like incredible to document. Being at Barclays Center, feeling the anticipation, the way Sabrina has the crowd on a string is amazing to document. So there's not like, I don't have a favorite player. I have these favorite experiences, and different players play into them in different ways. Calling greatness is the umbrella and the energy that comes with that. Like calling Asia Wilson right now in the middle of this streak, right, that's what you live for as a play-by-play broadcaster. But to give you a real answer on a game-to-game basis, if you were just going to say, hey, what's the safest guarantee and what's going to be a super fun, unique crowd energy experience for you on the mic, it's any Caitlin game right now. And it does remind me of what I feel calling Steph. And honestly, there's a million factors that go into it, but like the foundation of it is pulling up from 30 feet. You know, like there is something about that just like grips a crowd and you can feel the anticipation and it's just exciting and it's awesome. And so in the NBA, there's always like games and moments and players, but everything equal, the most unique experience for me is that feeling of calling a Steph game and the way the crowd responds to him. All things being equal, it's that feeling of calling a Caitlin game and the way the crowd responds to her.
No, that's awesome.
That's great.
Just to wrap up today, we just wanted to ask, where can people follow you and where can people support you?
Yeah, well, I haven't been on my X account in a year, and I don't plan to ever go back.
That's
so
healthy.
Forget that one. Oh my gosh, yeah. I will tell you, because of that toxic discourse we're talking about, I just decided, I was like, you know what? I love the world of women's basketball. I love the real things. I love covering these games. I love the relationships I have with the players in the league. Why am I going here? Why am I going to this place? It doesn't make me feel good. Even if 95% of it's like positive and adoration, it's the other 5% so toxic that I'm like, no. So anything I ever really need to know will find its way to me. So anyway, so don't go there because I will never be there again. So I'd say, yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. It's at Ryan Ruocco, Ryrukes. That I'm still very active with. And then just watch our games. That's the biggest way. The best way to follow us is to watch the games I think the best way to support the league is to watch the games, to consume the content, to read the stories, to listen to podcasts like this. That's the best way to support all of us who cover women's sports. And if I ever have anything else going on, I'll let you guys know. But for now, that's the best way.
Awesome. We are so appreciative of your time. Thank you for joining us. That wraps up our interview for today. Be sure to follow Ryan Ruocco on Instagram at RyRooks and throughout the WNBA playoffs on ESPN. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Danielle, wasn't that so good?
Yes, I really enjoyed my time with Ryan. He was so great, just such a lovely person. It was just a great interaction. I'm so happy we got to have that time with him.
Were you nervous at all?
Of course, anytime you interact with someone who is well known, it's nerve-wracking. But having met him at the Women's Final Four did ease my nerves because I was like, he was a really genuine person when we met him. And that kind of eased my nerves because he is so nice. But obviously, it's always a little nerve-wracking. How about you?
Yeah, the first question I asked him in that interview, I felt so nervous. But he spoke a lot about how generous the players are with their time, and the same for him, like just so generous with his time for him to come on this show. So we're so appreciative. Maybe he'll be our friend one day.
Yeah, maybe.
We're not there yet, but we're going to keep working on it. I really loved it because he's from New York and he reminded me of people from New York. And specifically, he reminded me of my dad because he said boom, boom, boom a couple of times. And my dad used to say boom, boom, boom when he was describing things all the time. So I just love that so much.
Yeah, for sure. So we hoped you enjoyed this episode. We loved getting to learn more about Ryan and loved hearing his thoughts about the upcoming CBA as well. We're really looking forward to the WNBA playoffs. They've already started, and we hope you have been enjoying the games as much as we have, and we're so excited to continue watching them in the coming weeks.
Yep, we'll be back in your feed next week to talk all about WNBA playoffs and all the other women's sports. So that's it for this week. We will see you next week on Women's Sports Weekly. In the meantime, watch women's sports and share the podcast with your friends. Rate and subscribe to the pod on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.